Okay, so I bet you've heard this one, right? Like, if God created a universe, then who created God? It's like one of those questions that just gets stuck in your head, you know? And honestly, it takes us to some pretty wild places trying to answer it. Ancient scriptures, physics. I mean, we've got a ton of sources here to really get into it.
Yeah, and it cuts across belief systems, right? I mean, it's not just about a specific religion. It's like, it's really about existence, period. Where did it all begin? Like, that's a big one.
Totally. And we're not trying to like debunk anything anyone believes. It's more about how have people wrestled with this question throughout history? You know, all those different
And
angles.
one of the most common approaches is this idea of God just being, like, eternal, no beginning, no end. It's a pretty common thing.
Right, like it's just a given, don't even ask. But I don't know, it's always felt kind of like a cop-out to me. Like, stop asking questions there. It feels incomplete.
Well, that's where philosophy comes in. You've got thinkers like Aristotle, Aquinas. They were dealing with this idea of, like, infinite redress. Everything needs a cause, right? So what about God? That's their dilemma. So they came up with this first cause idea, an uncaused cause, basically, the things that started it all going.
It's like the first domino. But wait, even with the first cause, doesn't that just move the question back? Like, what caused that?
Yeah, exactly. And that's a debate that's been going on forever, pretty much. And then you've got someone like David Hume, who comes along and says, well, hold on a minute. Maybe this whole cause and effect thing, maybe that's just something we make up, you know? It's just how we understand the world, not necessarily how it is.
Whoa. Okay, so now we can't even assume that everything needs a cause. That's a game changer. What does that do to the first cause idea?
Well, Hume was really skeptical about cause and effect. I mean, he thought it might just be our brains, like trying to make order out of chaos.
So where does that leave us with the whole creator thing, if we can't even be sure about cause and effect?
Right. It makes you really rethink your assumptions, and all this questioning of God, it really took off with science, especially guys like Nietzsche.
Yeah, Nietzsche, God is dead, right? I mean, he wasn't talking literally. It was more like the idea of God was losing its power.
Exactly. He saw science, changing how we see the world. And that was a problem for traditional beliefs.
And then science throws in, well, the Big Bang. It's like, boom, suddenly we have a scientific story about the universe starting.
Right. A beginning, a creation moment, you could say. But the question is, did something cause it? Or could it just happen? Just come into being?
So is science backing up the creator idea? Or is it more like suggesting another option?
Well, it's not that clear cut. The Big Bang tells us how it began, not necessarily why.
And then there's quantum mechanics, where stuff just pops in and out of existence. Like, no, because just poof.
Yeah, quantum mechanics is a trip. Throws everything we think we know about cause and effect out the window. I mean, if particles can just appear spontaneously, could the universe?
Okay, so we've gone from eternal beings to a first domino to a universe that might have just like self-created. Every answer seems to have a new question attached.
But isn't it interesting that whether we're talking God or the Big Bang, we always end up with this, like, wall, eternity, like something with no beginning, no end. Our brains have a really hard time with that.
Like we think in terms of time, cause and effect, A to B, eternity throws all that out.
And this is where we get to those modern guys trying to figure this stuff out. William Lane Craig, Christopher Hitchens, those debates.
Craig, he's the philosopher, right? He's all about the cosmological argument. Basically, the universe needs a cause, and that cause is God. But Hitchens, he'd be like, wait, that just keeps going forever. What caused God then?
Right, Hitchens would say you're just adding another step. It doesn't solve the mystery.
Feels like we're running in circles. Eternal God, or the universe just is eternally. It's mind-blowing.
Maybe instead of the answer, we should focus on how humans try to make sense of this. The whole vastness of it.
So it's not about the right answer, but about the questions themselves.
I think there's something to that, but hold on. We're just getting started. You've got all this other material here. Myths, history, power struggles, people's experiences, some really wild stuff.
You've got me hooked. Let's get into it.
With all this big picture stuff, sometimes it's easy to forget that, like, personal experience, that could be just as powerful as any argument.
Totally. It's one thing to talk about like eternity, first cause, all that, but when someone's like, hey, I touched the face of God, that's different. You know what I mean?
Right. And one of these sources you have, it's exactly that. It's a guy, Ahmed, he's a Muslim, and he says he died, met Jesus, and came back. Like his whole worldview changed.
Ahmed's story, it's intense. He has a heart attack, clinically dead, and he's talking about this light, and then, bam, there's Jesus.
And it's not just seeing him, it's the effect. Like he was questioning his faith, and suddenly it's all about Jesus. Total 180.
Yeah, like it rocked his world. Heaven, hell, this overwhelming love and peace. Like, wow.
It shows you how powerful these experiences can be, especially when they're like beyond what we think is possible. It makes you question everything.
And they said Ahmed's not alone. Like tons of people, different backgrounds, they report this kind of thing, near-death
It
experiences.
raises so many questions. Consciousness, afterlife, Like, does revelation just come out of nowhere sometimes?
It feels like whether it's literal or not, it's tapping into something we all want, that connection to something bigger.
For sure. And it's across cultures, religions, it doesn't matter. But with Ahmed, it shows the hard part too. You know, changing your beliefs like that.
Right. His family, community, they rejected him. It's a reminder that this stuff isn't just theoretical. It affects people's lives, relationships, everything.
Absolutely. It's personal experience, religious rules, and then society all mixed up. It's messy. Shows that faith is a journey, not a finish line. And those journeys, they can be tough.
It's grounding, like we're talking big ideas, but there are real people out there wrestling with this God question their own way.
And speaking of shaking things up, some of these sources, they go into like lost scriptures and how history might be different than we think.
You mean like the Nag Hammadi library, Dead Sea Scrolls, those hidden gospels, all that, like a different side of early Christianity?
Exactly. These discoveries, they changed how scholars see things. It's like there are all these beliefs back then in the early church, but then some got like pushed aside, forgotten.
Crazy to think they were hidden for so long, then pop up and make us rethink everything.
Like that Nag Hammadi library, it's got these Gnostic texts, and their view of God, creation, is totally different from mainstream Christianity.
Yeah, the Gnostics, they're like, hold on, the Old Testament God, Yahweh, he's not the top dog. They thought he was like a lesser being who made this material world to trap us.
And the real God, totally beyond us, can't even understand it. And the goal, escape this world, become enlightened. It flips the whole loving creator idea on its head.
It really makes you think, like what we call religious truth, is it just stuff that happened to win out? Power struggles, who decided what texts mattered?
It shows that how we understand God, religion, it never stops changing. New stuff is found, new interpretations, faith and reason, always bumping into each other.
Like a giant puzzle. You keep finding new pieces and the picture keeps shifting.
And with these lost scriptures, these other interpretations, it's like maybe there's way more to the story of God and humanity than we thought.
So we've gone from ancient stuff, philosophy, to experiences that don't make sense, to hidden texts that turn everything upside down. What now? Where do we even go from here?
I think the question is, how do we put it all together, all this information, and still try to answer that original question, who or what created God?
Man, it's been a wild ride, hasn't it? All these different ideas, trying to wrap our heads around this like ultimate question. Eternal beings, limits of what we can even know, personal stories, those lost writings. My brain's kind of fried.
It's a lot to process, for sure, but I think what we're seeing is that this question of where God came from, it's not one with a nice, neat answer. It's like it takes us to the edge of what we can even grasp.
One of the sources put it well, I thought, like whether it's ancient myths or modern science looking at the universe, we keep bumping into infinity. And that's both fascinating and frustrating.
Absolutely. Our brains are wired for patterns. Cause and effect, A leads to B. But when you try to apply that to like the very beginning of everything, it doesn't work so well. Something without a beginning or end, God, the universe, whatever. It's tough to get your head around.
It's like trying to stuff the ocean into I don't know, a thimble or something. It just overflows. Too big.
Maybe that's part of the point. Maybe wrestling with these impossible questions, that's what makes us, I don't know, stretch our thinking. Admit we don't know everything. Appreciate the mystery of it all.
Oh, you're saying instead of trying to get the right answer about who created God, it's more about like the journey of asking.
There's definitely something to that. The search, trying to understand, find meaning. That might be more important than actually finding the answer. And look where that search has taken us, all these different ideas, perspectives.
Like a big scavenger hunt. Ancient philosophers, science, people's experiences, even those secret texts. Every clue adds another layer to the mystery.
And the more you learn, the more you realize how much is still out there. The universe is huge, complex, and, yeah, full of wonder.
So for someone out there really grappling with this, God, the universe, where do they go from here? What do we do with all this?
I think the big takeaway is it's okay to be comfortable with not knowing. It's okay to say, I don't have all the answers. In fact, that questioning, the searching, that's what keeps us engaged, keeps us growing, keeps keeps us open to new possibilities.
So instead of being scared of the unknown, we should like lean into it. It's an invitation to explore, learn, understand more about ourselves, the world, everything.
Exactly. And remember, our understanding of all this, God, spirituality, the universe, it's a journey, not a destination. It changes over time, new ideas, experiences, perspectives. You never stop learning.
You know what? Next time someone hits me with, who created God? I'm going to hit him right back. What does that question mean to you? I'll say, what are you really looking for?
Yeah, that's a great place to wrap things up, I think. That search for meaning, understanding, it's deeply personal. No right or wrong answers, just the journey. So keep exploring, keep asking those questions, and keep your mind open to all the amazing things this universe has to offer.